start your own local news outlet and some of the, good news and bad news of it. And we're going to even attempt to talk about funding, even though the folks that we're supposed to, talk about funding couldn't stay. Yeah, let me do that.
This is a work, there's a course coming. Or is he look at the?
Oh, well, now, for those of you who may have friends that wanted to be here but couldn't for some reason, we are also taping this panel, and it'll be on my personal Facebook page, Denise Clay Murray, and I'll also get it out to all of NABJ's networks so that folks can, take a look at this afterward and be able to use the information, if you, want to just like sit and watch, and we'll try not to be too boring.
That's at the camera works.
Yeah, yeah, because, one of the things that we're also going to talk about is how, the importance of like equipment and different things. But allow me to introduce myself. My name is Denise Clay Murray, and I am a longtime NABJ member, and I'm an independent journalist, and I'm also the co-host of Philadelphia Hall Monitor, which is a local news outlet in Philadelphia in which I spend entirely too much time in city council chambers and city hall, but it's to get in the service of gathering information for Philadelphians that really, really need to know what's going on in their government, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on that they don't really know, and we try to get it to them. The first person here is my co-host at Hall Monitor, Lawrence McGlynn. Lawrence, or Larry, sometimes I call him Larry, is a longtime journalist. He loves City Hall reporting, like no one I've ever seen. So he's the co-founder of Hall Monitor and brought me and a couple other people in to help us put it together. Next to him is Kathia Woods. She is the founder and CEO of the Cup of Soul show, where she goes out and does independent reporting on arts and entertainment, which is not easy because it's not cheap. So, but she can talk a little bit about that. And next to her is Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. If you want to know what's going on in the world of sports or pop or some aspects of pop culture, this is your guy. He has been doing this independently for a lot of years. And when how Brandon ended up on my radar in terms of this particular topic is he crowdsourced his way to the NBA All-Star. And that was before people were really getting into doing that kind of thing. So hopefully you will learn a lot from us today. Thank you all for coming. I guess my first question for the entire panel, when you look at the news landscape these days, when you look at the landscape of media, how important is it for folks to be willing to do some things independently? How important has it become, especially since you have legacy news outlets that have been seriously contracting? I think I'll start with her.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here and good to talk shop. I'll be honest with you, having not only worked in independent work, but also working at network, I have found that working independent and then working at network, sometimes with my colleagues, doing the extra work, sometimes they don't want to do. And the thinking out the box at times can be challenging. What I'm finding in the last maybe 2-3 years, where you've seen a lot of legacy brands go bankrupt, those same people who are working at legacy brands have now found themselves having to do the creative work that they neglected or didn't want to do. and you're kind of either going with the flow or transitioning into other things. And I think I really notice it more so in news, on newscasts like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock news, where now you're seeing the weatherman or the weatherwoman or the weather person, what have you, using emojis just to get the young people's attention. You have to be able to catch attention. You have to still be able to catch people reading from left to right. And so a lot of this is just not reinventing the wheel, but maybe adding some emojis and some stickers to the wheel, if you may. So I think it's being creative, but it's also just the changing of the guard, because this is not our grandparents and our great-great-parents and our parents' news anymore. It's a whole new world, as Aldous Huxley said in his book.
Kathia?
I think, especially covering entertainment, as we get into serious stories like the Me Too movement, where you get into allegations. I think we've seen this with the Tory Lanez trial, with the Diddy trial. There is the Court of Public Appeal, people who don't know the difference between someone whose beat is court reporting and an actual court reporter, which is very scary. And just overall not understanding that how you feel does not determine the results of in a court of law. So I think, it's just understanding that how we feel about someone just because they made some bops doesn't mean that, they're not a horrible person, or because we love the TV show. So I think what we're finding in this rush to be first, especially in entertainment, everybody wants to be first. Everybody, TMZ has really pushed that from the National Enquirer. They want to announce who's dead first, which is horrible. The fact that you're rushing to say someone's dead. And not actually making sure they actually died. So you have people out here saying, I'm not dead, which is funny, but not. But then you have people also, not respecting people's families, so allow them an opportunity to say that, right? So you have a lot of misinformation, and the correction is not being done fast enough because you want the traffic. That's how everything gets measured by advertisers. So it's really important to still be responsible, even though it's a good time to say, hey, let's fact check. Let's call the person's representative. Let's do that extra step. Because again, it's horrible to say that someone passed. Like Rick Fox, someone said Rick Fox passed when Kobe Bryant died, and he literally had to have his people put out a statement saying, hey, I was not with him. I did not die, because he has children and whatnot. So I think that's the part that's missing. The editors are being cut, those jobs are being cut, the people that fact check, the people that make sure that you're not saying things in an inflammatory way. Legal departments are not checking things in. So these are the things that are being hurt as people start their own sites, right? I also come from traditional journalism, so for me, I think about what type of information I want to have on my site, how I want to build my community, my audience, right? Because it takes forever to build trust. It takes 30 seconds to break it. So I think those are the challenges when you are going at it alone, but it can be done and you should do it. And I always try to say is, what is it that I want people to say about me as a journalist? I don't need people to like me. I need people to respect me. In other words, as they say, am I good in these streets? And I'm like, yes, I am. So that's the way I approach it.
Okay, Larry?
So up here you have sports, entertainment, and then I have the most exciting thing, local government. And
Mixture of all of that.
yes, absolutely. We are constantly looking for different, now there's 4 of us at Hall Monitor. 4, we're a worker-owned business. There are 4 of us who are the principal owners, 25% each, and then we have a couple people who work with us as I guess you could call contractors or freelancers. So it's a small shop. And everything that's been said here about editing, fact-checking, on all that falls on 4 people, really. But not just that, the business side of it. I was an English teacher before I became a journalist. My whole life has been running away from numbers. I don't want to have to deal with that, but now I have to. And that's why every March when the taxes go in, I'm terrified of going to prison. But we have a good accountant. Everything is, as far as I know, everything's been fine. But I'm the last person in the world who should be doing business kind of things. But here I am. It's about half of what I do now. But that half of my job is totally fine, because the other half is I work with the 4 best people on the planet, the 3 best people on the planet. Denise is one of them. And we get to do the thing we want to do the way we want to do it. And you cannot, there's no way to express how gratifying that is. But it's really hard. There was a time when I was getting up at 4 in the morning so I could get everything done before my wife and I take our son to school. I stopped doing that because I just couldn't do it. But I mean, there's a lot of work. It's a 6.5 day a week job, really. But it works. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is find ways to bring local government to the masses and make it fun and interesting.
We could hire about Beyonce.
We're in talks. But that's one of the key challenges, right? So it's making it short. A minute video here, a minute video here, explaining some aspect of city council or a major bill that just came up. Every once in a while, something will happen. Like we had a situation where they were going to build a new arena in the middle of Center City. Which, by the way, everybody hated the idea. It got passed. It was a done deal, and then at the last second, the 76ers said, "No, we're not going to do this now." It's amazing. That takes all the oxygen out of the room, and there's a lot to cover there. But on the other hand, what about all the other stuff that's going on that nobody is looking at? And that's one of our key things that we try to do. If nobody else is doing it, we're going to do it. Because there's so many things that happen that just fall through the cracks. And my suspicion, to answer your question, I think I'm going to answer your question here. In our lifetime, most of the news outlets will be like Hall Monitor, small shops, a lot of people covering neighborhoods, doing things like that, and it might be for the better. But it's also going to be a challenge where you have to look at, well, who are these people? Where's their training? Where do they come from? But I think, my belief is that's the direction we're headed.
Now, you mentioned math, which of course most of us journalists avoid unless we're going into business journalism or something like that. But structuring a company or structuring yourself as an entity to be an independent, what is that process like? And how much screaming into the void did it entail? And was that the scariest part of deciding to go independent? I'm going to start with the ladies first.
Yes and no. Good news is I can tell the stories I want to tell. I don't have to sit here and argue why we should write about women directors or women MCs, a certain type of woman MC that isn't being salacious, but is still making great art, right? Those conversations I don't have to have anymore, which are taxing and exhausting, even in 2025. We're still, unfortunately, my colleagues are having those, right? Second, the other half of it is all on you. It's your business. What kind of image do you want to say? What is your tagline? What is the introduction that people have to your business? What is the structure tone of your business? What is the paperwork looking like when you hire people to do stuff like writing and things like that? When do you have to, when does it go from a W-9 to a W-2? What's the difference, 1099 to, what does it entail? What are the thresholds, right? So that is what he was talking about, understanding that you are a business and you can't be like, oh, it's going to HR. You are HR, right? And then in my past life, I also was a branch manager and I was a financial advisor. So I do understand that I am the employer and the employee for myself. You are your own, you wear 2 hats, right? So I'm responsible for my healthcare, my retirement fund, that part of the business that's not sexy, right? Luckily, I'm married, so my healthcare is taken care of, but I did move my 401k into a SEP IRA, so I have to think about that. There's quarterly taxes, right? And Uncle Sam wants their cut, no matter what's going on with you. When do you do it? I am like him, I don't do that, I don't do my taxes myself, I hired that out because again, I want to stay on the good side of the government. So these are the things that nobody ever talks to you about, right? And you make mistakes. I certainly made a plethora of ones. I'm still learning how to do certain things. How do you advertise? Which platform? What works? What social media platform should you be on? Every day there's something new. So that is all part of running the business. But the long term has been me starting this business has opened up so many doors, has opened up speaking engagements, has opened up me using that voice on other platforms, has gotten me through doors, and has really been, as stressful as it can be, it's been the best decisions I made for myself. So the idea of betting on yourself, I was putting, as they say, gas into everybody's tank except mine, and now at least if I'm gonna be stressed, if I'm gonna put up with stuff, at least I know the check is coming this way.
Now, Brandon, what kind of company do you have, or do you have a company? Are you a business entity?
Scoop B and Scoop B Radio are both business entities. And it's interesting because I kind of structured them differently. So I've had the nickname Scoop B since I was a kid when I started in the industry. At 12, doing radio for the Nets when they were in New Jersey years ago. Did it for 2 years, and I carried that name as a pen name, basically, when I was a columnist at the school newspaper, in college, grad school, and just understanding the world of branding, but also understanding the world of business. And I'm a child of hip hop, so I understand how much names, even looking at hip hop in and of itself, I thought it was always ingenious with Def Jam had a street team where, you know, that goal was marketing. That goal was to get that mixtape out to the masses so that they could tell their friends about it, whether it was in Cleveland, Ohio, Akron, Ohio, Athens, Ohio. You want to get that word out so that people know who's who and why. And in answer directly to your question, I was laid off 2.5 years ago. Actually, it'll be 2 years on the 23rd of this month. I was at network television. And during that time, I started to really look at paperwork, whether that was trademarking, whether that was LLCs. And because I was basically being a child of hip hop, paying people out to, you know, to edit this, do this, but really started looking at the structure of it. You know, and I've always, you know, been over a process of investing in yourself, whether that is having a publicist where you're promoting different things. You know, you're paying your videographer, or you're paying, you know, just a myriad of people to do things, but you want to claim those on your taxes because you want to get your money back in some way, shape, or form. And so, just looking at that structure, I've become more savvy. I think I understood the process, but more legalized it and made it make sense. I kind of echo what you were saying, just about the stories that you want to tell him more. Typically, reporting and things that I write, even things on the platform of Scoop B Radio, tend to go viral because of information or interviews that people have given me. And what I have found is, even within my business structure of what I do, you get reached out to by publications who want to partner. And I think that's where it gets a little interesting, because I think in the space that we're in right now, quite frankly, the things that people are offering, the deals are terrible. I'd rather work for myself and continue to build my way, and the right situation will present itself. So I find that in this market right now, while a lot of journalists are being laid off and a lot of journalists are having to restructure, I remember taking a grad school course at Hofstra University, and the professor was sharing that, and this was in 2009, her sharing with the class that in the next 10 to 15 years, it's not going to be about what network you're at. It's going to be about your brand, your reach, and the trust that you build with the consumer standing the test of time. And so I think hyperlocal is so important, because if people trust you and they trust your voice, you take your home, the world will find you. And I'm finding that I'm falling in love with that process again, because on the national side, it's just a lot of poop out there.
Thank you for saying poop instead of the word that I had in my head.
One of my favorite words.
Larry?
Sugar, honey, iced tea.
So one of the things I'd recommend if you're gonna start your own outlet, there's a lot of prep work that goes into it, and one of the best things you can do is if you don't have a friend who's a lawyer, try to make one. Because having somebody you can go to and say, does this look right? What kind of business entity should I be? And it all depends, go state by state. You know, where we're from in Pennsylvania isn't what people, because we were in Chicago last year, and a couple other people said, well, where I'm from, it's different. Oh, I don't own. But we were recommended to become an LLC, limited liability corporation. And I just said, yeah, okay. You know, and in Pennsylvania, we registered with the state this year for the first time ever. In Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth said you have to file a report, business report. And I thought, oh God, another report I have to go. And luckily it was easy. It was just like, how many people work there? Are you still active? Okay, you're done. All right. But all those little things, if you miss any of them, can really hamstring you. To have the state come back and say, hey, you didn't do this thing, or God forbid the federal government. But there are a lot of issues with that. But having, again, we have an accountant, we have a lawyer who's a friend of mine who doesn't get paid, because it just helps me. And having people like that, and then we also have, I guess the best way I could describe these things are like consortiums of small news outlets that are kind of like development incubators. And we work with one called IndieGraph. There's also, there's a handful of other ones. And even if you don't join one, but being in contact with these organizations can be really helpful, because they know all kinds of things that I had no idea about before I started. So finding a community of people who are doing this, who get funding to help small outlets, is really important. And having somebody who can explain the business side and how it all works and help you get set up so it's not, like you're not gonna have any problems later, I think is crucial. That's the first, that, and again, determining what kind of content you want to do, those are the two first steps that need to happen.
Speaking of money, you can't really do this kind of thing for free. You have to, find, if this is what you ultimately want to do for yourself as a full-time person, you need to find the money to do it. So we're going to talk about the thing that we were always taught that was too polite to talk about, money. There are grant organizations and different things that are out there that can help you with that, but in some cases you have to figure out how to monetize things yourself. What was the biggest challenge for you in terms of finding the money to do what you do, and how did you meet that challenge?
You have to tell them about the classes.
Well, we don't name names anymore because we're not under contract. However, what I will say is that prior to basically tackling my brand head on, I will say that I have a lot of friends who are influencers, who have large followings, and I took their blueprint. I think a lot of times I double as a journalist, but also double as an influencer in this instance. A lot of times people want to send me things, and if you want me to post, you got to pay for that. It's not free. And I feel like a lot of times now, what I'm finding is there's a lot of affiliate marketing program or affiliate influencer programs that has basically watered down the influencer market quite a bit. Prior to that, for years, I've taken partnerships with any iteration of Nutella, Nike, Adidas, Starter Brand, and it was basically them paying me to post, but also hosting various events. There was a glasses company that I had a partnership with for years that had, they were actually this is when the NBA started the whole jersey patch thing. This particular company was the first. The Bulls were the first team, I believe, to actually have a patch deal within the league. And this particular glasses company had this big announcement, and basically I became a liaison using the Scooby Radio brand being a liaison between the Bulls and that particular company, and it paid dividends. In this sense, we were creating branded content with players on that team, and I'll never forget just the ability to grow in this instance. If you pay attention to the Bulls, they have a guy that's the star of their team now named Kobe White, and Kobe is from North Carolina, was drafted by the Bulls, and he really became the focal point of that team, I would say, last year. He signed a deal with the Bulls his rookie year, and to this day, if I need something from Kobe, a quote, or we're in the back telling jokes, and he's kind of very stoic. He's kind of opened up a lot with media at large, but the cool thing about just that whole partnership with Zenny, which I said their name, was that they basically, opened the door for me to, have conversations with players and really just develop a go-to. But there's been other instances where I've used my name, my brand, my reach to make that happen. And it's a constant, picking up of various blocks. So, like, for example, I remember this was maybe 2019 or 2020. I was doing an interview, and I had my team put together a who's who of different pictures. So again, it's the Bulls. Who wore it better? So I had a laminated photo of Harry Carey, a laminated photo of Horace Grant, and a laminated photo of Steve Urkel. All tied to Chicago, right? Horace Grant with the goggles, Steve Urkel with the nerd glasses, and then Harry Carey, of course, the legendary Chicago Cubs announcer. And just really played around with it. It was really just a good conversation, and continued to build, and was building stuff for years. But I find that now in today's market, it's more about connecting with local companies that want to spend money on advertising. It also is not people just giving money. I think companies have gotten more savvy with it, not just going to give money away and there's no return on investment. ROI is a big thing. So I think, even on websites, making sure you're tracking your views, your reads, your stuff on YouTube, making sure you're tracking that, because then you're using that in those meetings, and they're deciding what kind of money they want to spend. So I've been able to create, just to be transparent with you, deals where I've made monthly 10,000 from companies, 2,500 from companies. It just depends on the deal, and also what lawyer friends or what agent friends want to look over the contract and also negotiate on your behalf if you get to a point where it's kind of a standstill.
But you left out the best part of the story.
Which part?
You don't even need the glasses.
Oh, that.
I love that.
So I have 20/20 vision. Don't let that go over your head. I started wearing different glasses because I was do TV hits in the local New York area, and I wasn't sleeping because I was up writing. There was a point I was freelancing at one point at like 10 different publications at the time. I was adjunct professoring, and I would go to the kiosk in the mall before I got on the train just to wear glasses to kind of mask the bags under my eyes. And that particular glasses company, which I named, they reached out to me and they wanted to do a deal. And I have like over maybe 200 glasses sitting in my closet at home, and I switch them out to go with my outfits, but I don't wear glasses.
You do, you wear them well.
Well, thank you, brother. Skylar the gentleman. I didn't pay him to say that either. But the point is, create something that attaches to your brand, and you rock with it. I'm gonna eventually change out the glasses. It's gonna be something else. But had I not had that deal, and had I not, did that, I wasn't able to use that. I was able to use that money to invest in things that I needed. It's a blessing.
I'll have to try that with my husband, Chris. If you've seen him around here during the convention, you never see him without a hat, usually a fedora or something like that. I'm gonna have to try and hook him up with a hat person for this thing. Now, Kathia, you've gone to the Cannes Film Festival and all these other places that require, you know, plane tickets and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how, you know, that gets funded for you?
Well, two ways. I'm lucky enough because I do cover arts and entertainment, my main beat now. I got started covering hip hop pre-internet. I know for some of you that seemed like the dinosaur age. I was on the Def Jam Street team back in the day. That was the original social media. And I did really well in terms of pushing product, and that's how I also got some interviews, so I wasn't just out there hawking free stuff for a t-shirt. No ma'am. And however, I am very fortunate enough to do junkets. And junkets means they fly you out. The studios fly you out, right? And then that in itself. But so I'm very smart and make sure I fly one predominant airline, and then continue that when I travel domestic and then international. And if you fly East Coast, I used to live in Philadelphia, so I figured out how many miles that is, right? So Philadelphia to Los Angeles used to be 3,000 miles in American Airlines. Now I live in the Atlanta area, so I'm mostly flying Delta. But let's take my American example. So it's 3,000. So I was thinking, I was like, how often do I need to fly to hit my first threshold? And I literally flew to California, came back, 2 days later did the same trip again to hit my first threshold. It was worth it to me, because it's better seating, upgrades, all of that. You do what you have to. Also, I was accruing miles, so I would use some of my miles to go to things that were just for me. So I've cashed in for CinemaCon and for Sundance, my American Airlines miles. Thank God me and American have broken up, because if you know, you gotta pay for Wi-Fi, a bunch of other stuff that is basura. Anyhow, however, also hotels.com, I don't do anything. I have credit cards that have points. I use my Platinum American Express card. I am in that lounge like it's my full-time job, because if you know that annual fee, you will be in there full-time too. Then you also get access to Delta, so I play the credit card game. I also have a Amex Delta Gold card, so I never pay for a bag, period, because I refuse to. So it's all of those things. Then, so I use my junket, that, then also studios use similar hotels, so I sign up for the point system, sign up for stuff that way, so I accrue points that. When I book for myself, I don't use any service where I can't get points. So I used hotel.com enough where for my sister's wedding, I had 2 free nights stay, or Marriott, so you always do that. So that's the other trick. I can probably tell you which best apps to use to get the best airfare. Priceline, Skip Leg, you name it. Don't skip Leg, actually, but just use them to price compare. And then for COD, I am not a big fan of always doing a GoFundMe, but I did do a GoFundMe, and I was very clear specifically what I was using for, and my top donors got an email and got to see all my coverage. So they knew, because I'm really big on transparency and trust. So the people who gave me some people gave me some cashola. I was like, here, this is what I did with your money. And Trip.com, shout out to them. That's how I booked my fare to Cannes. And I was able to pay round trip air travel from Atlanta to Nice for $450. And yes, I was inside the plane, and I did carry on.
That's nice to know you were inside the plane, because I was wondering there for a second.
Yeah, and listen, European international bargain is a lot better than ours, and I got a free meal and plenty of leg room, and I got to where I got it, and I paid, again, through my points and stuff, was able to get a modest hotel, where I did a lot of research on literally what I could walk from my hotel to where I needed to go. It said 15 minutes, but I got it down to 10. So make a long story short, that's one way I do it. The other part is, thank God for Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes has a thing they call press inclusion. By the way, if you're interested in going to Sundance, it's open right now, the app for Sundance. Well, basically they started it for people like us, people underrepresented press, women. We don't have enough female film critics, especially not black ones. LGBTQIA, people mature, 40 plus, that's me too. So all of these things, so I apply for everything. And for my trip to TIFF this year, Rotten Tomatoes once again came through like the good girl that she is, and is covering my expenses. And once I'm on the ground, this is the part I do want to say is I'm doing stuff for my side, but I tell everybody and their mama, hey, I'm going to be at TIFF. I am still available to do freelance work and stuff like that because a lot of people can't send people. So your girl's gonna get a couple double checks. But the key is you gotta be creative and apply for everything. What's the worst thing that can happen? Somebody says yes. $100 here, $200 here, $300 here. That might be your food. That might be your plane ticket. If you cut and paste, you can apply to more than one thing. I don't understand people that go, well, I don't want to offend anybody. Offend people. Go get your money.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand that. You know what I mean? Like, who are you offending? Like, who are these people? And reach out to companies. Do partnerships if you have a large social media funding, right? In terms of, reach out to the Marriott. Hey, 2-night stay. I will talk about the hotel. I'll talk about my experience. I will give you a whole breakdown from room service, everything. Was the room nice? Was my view, was it really ocean view, whatever it is, city skyline, right? Use your storytelling skills. We're journalists. Like, learn how to sell your, that's the other part I will say, and learn to sell yourself. Learn to brag about yourself. Like, we get this thing, well, I don't want to be the center of the story. This is not, you're not being a Kardashian, but tell your credentials. I won an award. I've been doing this for 20 years. These are my clients. This is a testimony from my clients. That is your carte blanche. That's your American Express. Brands, believe it or not, do want to partner with people that have credibility, all that other stuff. So in other words, go get your money.
I have a bus pass that I pay for myself. But we have gone the grant route because that is sort of, we haven't really gotten fully into the advertising yet. Apparently it's going to be kind of fertile for us in some ways, but we have very strict restrictions on who we would allow to advertise with us. So that's where the grants have come in. And the thing about grants, they're hard to write because you don't know what the people who are reading it want to see. It's very difficult. But in our experience anyway, what's happened, once you get one, that's currency for the next one. Well, this organization gave us $10,000. That was our first one, $10,000. And we needed it at that time. And then the next one was $20,000. And then there was one that was $50,000. And now the last one was $100,000. So when people start to notice, especially the granting organizations, when they see, oh, well, these people have credibility, that's almost as important as what you're doing in that world. At least, again, that's our experience. And it's been described to us that way as well. So the scary thing is you sit down and say, well, I'm going to spend hours on this thing that may not get anywhere. That's a risk. It's a big risk. But on the other hand, it's all those hours you spend are going to make it easier later on. And don't be afraid if you don't get a grant to call them up and say, could you just tell me what happened? What can I do better for next time? Usually they'll do it. Because one of the ones we didn't get, we called him and he said, oh, it wasn't anything to do with you. It was well done. It was just, at that point, we were looking for something else. And that's one of the hard things about this. It's almost like when you apply for a college or you're applying for a job, you don't really know what that hiring committee or admissions committee is going to look for. So you're kind of taking a chance. But once it starts to work, some momentum builds. So it can be worth it in the long run. But also, if you're doing good work, throw that in there and say, here's what we did, and nobody else is doing this thing. And that's really useful.
I will add the other part that I had to learn, so learn from my silliness, is find out when companies, in December is probably not a good time to ask, because companies are gonna hold on to their book because they wanna have books, because they wanna show they're ending the year really strongly, right? So figure out what, like, talk to people at various companies, because everybody has a different system. Hey, when's a good time to apply and ask you for funding, right? Beginning of the year. Some people want to request it in September and October, so they'll make the decision, disperse things in January, February. Again, like he said, it might not be your proposal, and maybe the timing of when you ask. So again, that's where you gotta do your due diligence. If you have people in common, right, that have applied for a grant, say, hey, you applied for this grant, when did you start the process? And that's the important part. We're all, again, most of us in here are journalists. Do your due diligence and ask the important questions to give you the best chance to win. It's not always you or your brand, because I know we all get into our head and say, maybe I'm not big enough, maybe I don't have enough following, but just ask the question, when do you need it? How long do you want it to be, right? Sometimes it can be too long. We all tap out after 1,000 words. So just do that part. That's, I would say that.
If I can add to what you both said, I like sneakers, and I like chocolate chip cookies. And hear where I'm going with this. When you walk past a sneaker store in your childhood, or if you walk past a bakery in your childhood, two things stood out. If you walk past a bakery, you smell brownies, you smell chocolate chip. That's the advertising. That's how you create repeat customers. When you walk past the sneaker store and you look at the display, long before you had the raffle tickets to get the Jordans and stand in line, you saw the shoe, you saw it wrapped in saran wrap, you saw how the laces look, you saw, like, you can envision a shoe that you wanted, you can envision what it smelled like the new car smell. You're creating the user experience, and you're creating a repeat experience once you do it right. And I think that's so important. It's also about how you package it. I think that's where I was going with that. How you package what you're selling, the return on investment, and how you create the user experience for people to keep not only consuming your product, but wanting to spend money to get more of your product from the advertising side.
I was gonna ask if, does anybody have any questions, and somebody has already raised their hand, so,
Hi. Thank you. My name is Grace Wood. I'm a columnist, a life and culture. SILive.com is part of Advance Local, and I was listening with interest about.
could you stand up so you don't have to keep doing that, because I'm sure that'll hurt your neck after a while.
Yeah, thank you. I was listening with interest about Rotten Tomatoes and Sundance. Right now, I'm a life and culture columnist. I'm over 40. I'm a woman of color. And so I was listening with interest about your story about getting sponsorships and partnerships. And I've been doing that around the New York State, tri-state area, New York City, tri-state area. But I just looked up Sundance, and I was wondering, how did you package yourself to become, something that they would love to choose and to partner with specifically? Because you said, to kind of highlight, all the attributes that they would want to pick because of underrepresented or marginalized journalists. And also, if you've gone, how does that look when you go? Are you working every day, or what are the expectations?
Happy to answer. Did everybody hear her question? So before I answer, so we're all walking together, as they say. I basically did my blueprint. I started covering local film festivals. Philadelphia has a Philadelphia Film Festival, which is kind of like their version of New York Film Festival. Chicago is a great international film festival, so I started there. I covered the Asian Film Festival, the Women's Film Festival, like smaller festivals as well, and would just, watch movies and do my reviews and then interview people, all of that. I put all of that in my packaging, showing that when I do go to a film festival, this is my thought process. These are the type of things that I cover. I also do a combination of carpets, interviews, and and reviews, right? And that year I also hit Tribeca because from Philadelphia, that's like an hour, that's an easy commute, right? So all of that put it together. So I did like three of each, right? What I felt were my strongest, because put your best foot forward. Then, kind of explained in a short story, yes, I'm a woman of color, I'm also over 40, I'm a wife and a mom, and I bring a different perspective. I'm also a Latina. So, listen, use every slash you can. And on top of that, I was like, my primary language is not English, so I can do interviews in Spanish and Portuguese. My rusty French worked in France, so that will be okay, and I speak German. So all of that, put that in the package, right? So I really was like making it hard. Now to answer your question, prior to that, I always look in the program, there are the bigger titles, and then I do a day that I just pick movies that maybe I like the title, or maybe it's just interesting, whatever. These are all up and coming directors, and out of that sometimes you get some real gems and you discover, that's how I first got in touch with Jonathan Majors. I know that's a trivial name right now, but stay with me. He was in a movie called Last Black Man in San Francisco. I tweeted out along with my colleague, when we were my first Sundance, keep your eye on this guy, he's going to be a superstar. I was 1000% correct. His publicist saw it, did my first interview with him, and then got him again for 20 minutes for The Holiday Fall, based upon that interaction, me being at Sundance. The point is, just over all these years, I trust my instincts. I have a knack, and I don't say that, I suck at a lot of things, advanced math being one of them. But I'm good at being able to poke out a good music project, I have good ears, and who's gonna be a star, or somebody that is right there. I did it with Coleman Domingo, I did it with him, Michael B. Jordan, a couple other ones, where I'm like, something about that person, just a little bit more than the other people. I can't tell you when it's gonna break, but when it breaks, it's gonna be, they're gonna take off, right? And same thing, I saw a movie at TIFF called We're Grown Now, by a woman that made the movie Halal. It's on Apple TV Plus if you have that. Beautiful film. Just spoke to me. If I'm passionate about something, breaks off and I go after it. So once you get there, pick the titles that speak to you, go and hit the carpets. Like I would make friends with the publicist. I am very good for that. I'm like, hey, I'm back, or they're like, can you come by in 10 minutes and stand by? I'm there in 5 with everything. Somebody's always not gonna show up and I'm like right there on the carpet. That's how I got Lupita, I got all these different people, even though my outlet wasn't like popping, as they say. But the saying is, if you stay ready, be ready. Once you get there, we're all in the same seating, right? Game on. Once we're on the carpet, I don't care if you're with Entertainment Tonight, Hollywood Reporter, I'm gonna get mine 5 minutes. So you just have to be fearless. The weather's trash, it gets cold, but still go and do what you do as a journalist. The same principle, go and don't be shy, make friends with a publicist. I was in the ticketing office, like it was my second job when I couldn't get into screenings, and I was like, they're gonna get sick of me or they're gonna work with me. So that's pretty much my approach, and please apply. I mean, it's important for us to go and support our people, support women, and I think your readers will be interested in as far as locally as well.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hi, Rasheed Shabazz with Open Voices, a program at the Maynard Institute. I have 2 questions. So I'm curious for folks with City Hall, how did you decide to focus on City Hall? Like there may have been other needs like education, arts and culture. And the second question, you shared some of the ways of, I don't want to call it finessing, but just using the different resources. But what are other ways people could fund arts and culture?
I'll let you go first, sir.
So there were sort of 2 reasons why City Hall became the thing we do. First of all, that was just my general interest. Before I even thought about doing journalism, I'd read about what was going on. There's a lot more happening here than we know about. You know, it doesn't, there's more out there. And I was just curious. So that was part of it. The practical reason is the more you do it, the more you realize how important it is and how everything that's going to happen in the city runs through City Hall, and particularly the budget. And so we just had the budget director say, "You're the only people who read this. Why are you asking me these questions?" I'm like, well, we read it. You know, it's 3,000 pages, but we're going to go through this thing. But yeah, it was interest and then need. And from City Hall, you touch on everything. Every single thing that happens in the city. You know, there's somebody in City Hall who knows. And I'll call somebody and say, "Hey, I need this thing." And they'll say, "No, hold on. 5 minutes later, I got to call back. It's this," you know. So that's what it was, really.
Again, film and TV offers you some opportunities that others, there's such a thing called for your consideration, FYC. We're getting into award season for film, so there's money there. If you know you can show your traffic and everything, your demographic, there is, I've been approached by smaller films too. Hey, you know, that's where you have your deck page, all the stuff this gentleman was talking about your different, be ready to do business, what the pricing is for a social media post on the website, all of that. Partner with studios, especially again, if whatever you specialize, right? In his case, he has sports. So let's say he can reach out to a studio and it's a sports film and, you know, a certain niche, let's say it's basketball. And he can say, hey, documentary, whatever, you know, it is, even though, let's say it's Netflix, right? Even though it's a documentary, we know Netflix has got the coin. He can then be like, sure, be happy to talk about this. Can you give me a screener because you want to make sure it aligns with your mission? And then be like, he can negotiate his price and talk about it on his radio show and decide which way he wants to go, website, radio show, and all of that. There also locally, there's stuff going on, partner with your travel and tourism. You know, Philadelphia has a really big push on coming to Philadelphia and filming. Dope Thieves was filmed in Philadelphia. So you can work with studios and talking about the local angle from your city, why it's important, all these other things. You just have to be creative. Like, we gotta think a little bit bigger, but also not limit ourselves.
Yes?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kennedy Buck. I'm a reporter for NBC 10 News in Providence, Rhode Island, and I've been told that sometimes forming and finding your brand as a person can ruin how people see you as a journalist. So how did you all find that balance of your brand as the person and also how you present that work as a journalist?
I'm me 365 days a year. Thank God I'm of the generation pre-internet. Like that, I don't know how to be anybody but me. Like, I'm too old to become somebody else, right? I'm also a wife, I'm a mom, so I bring those two things to the table. I moved to this country in 1981 when I was 10 years old from another country. So I bring all those things, I bring my culture. I'm proud to be Latina, you know, yes, I'm Black, duh, I have a mirror. But I'm also, my point of entry is not African American. So I bring my Brazilian roots, all of that to my work. You're hiring all of that. You're hiring a woman over 50. I'm happy to still be above ground, my knees work and all that other good stuff, because a lot of my colleagues are not here anymore, you know? So there are a lot of, that's the way you have to look at it. A lot of things that people like to consider crutches, that's their issue. Your opinion of me is none of my business in terms of that, you know what I mean? I can't change those things. But what you also get, as I like to say with me, is I care deeply about my work. I worked really hard to build my resume. I'm not gonna destroy it over 30 seconds, right? My opinion pieces about the work. I don't care who you date, right? I don't do interviews about who you slept with. Now, if you committed a crime, you're raping people and stuff like that, we're gonna have to talk about that. Sexual allegations, all of that. Those are important because we have an image of you in one way, you're saying one thing, but the evidence shows to the contrary. So that's how I built my brand. What am I passionate about? What do I like? Even with movies, right? I love artsier movies. I'm a huge documentary fan, right? I was saying the other day, I love 70s TV. I'm a TV kid. I'm of that generation. I can probably talk to you for days about television serials, police serials. I wrote a whole thing on homicide, life on the street. So write about, present the things that you're passionate about, right? I'm a Star Wars kid. I'm of that generation, 1977. I was 7 years old, saw that movie 10 times in a row, right? So be authentic about what you're passionate about, right? I'm not gonna write about, techie stuff. That's not my passion, you know what I mean? So that's the way I would look at it. Because again, be yourself. If you like fashion, then pursue that. Because people can tell when it's phony. So be you.
If I could add to that, 10 years ago, I was at a publication, and the owner of the publication told me that personal branding shouldn't conflict with them, and I need to basically choose. And what you said just now, the question you asked, I'm glad you asked it, because I often feel that when higher ups make those comments about someone and their brand, it's actually hate.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they wish that they could be in that position, and for whatever reason, they're not there. And I think that being authentically you is so important. How can you not show what you are interested in every day? You're wearing pearls. I'm sure that's not your only pair of pearls. I'm sure that's not your only pink outfit. And so you look at any celebrity, they all have strong personal brands. There's something about them that stands out. And I think that in the journalism world, just like even in the sports world, even in hip hop, you have to kind of take the blueprint from actors. I remember watching The Last Dance when we were all on lockdown in 2020, during the height of the pandemic. And there was a line where they talked about Michael Jordan, and I love Michael Jordan, I love his game, I love his brand. And they talked about how Michael and his team studied tennis stars and how tennis stars carried themselves. And he applied that portion into his personal brand as a basketball player, something you've never seen before. Look at all of the stars that are emulating the brand, having their sneaker brand connected to their high school, connected to their college. All your personal branding is doing is it speaks for you when you cannot, when you're on camera. Your personal brand is the extension of who you are as a talent. Always remember that.
And it also helps if you show up credibly. I mean, I don't necessarily have a brand, but folks know that, if I'm at a press conference or something, they know that I'm going to ask a question that folks may not have thought about, but the person that we're about to ask this question really does not want to answer.
And I think just from hall monitor's perspective, I was about to set this one out. Do we have a brand? I don't know.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I was gonna disagree with you, and I was gonna say, that is your brand. When Denise is in the room, she's gonna get to the meat of the matter. She's not gonna allow you to do the tap dance and the cut and paste. She's going to give a good follow-up. She is the journalist that some of these politicians are running from. So that is her brand. She's there to stand on business, and you need that in this current political thing. And she's not standing on business to be, some people just, like Outkick. Some of these folks are just trying to say stuff to be controversial, to get the clicks, and then everybody talks about how inappropriate the question is. No, she's legitimately already done the footwork. She already talked to the people in the neighborhood. Let's say it's West Philly. She's already had the conversation. She's been to that intersection of the street, and she can say, when the person goes, oh, we fixed it, she'll be like, no, I was there yesterday at 9 a.m. I literally spoke to Mrs. Jones that lives on the corner of 53rd and whatever you have there in Girard, and that hole is still in there. So how can you sit here and stand in front of everybody and say, it's been fixed, when we literally, I'm looking at the picture, right? So that is her brand. People know that if she's gonna work her story, she's done all the small steps, the big steps, and she's going to hold people accountable, and you need that, you know? It may not be flashy, but it's important. And you know, like I said, it's when she's there, some people are like, oh Lord, you know, let me get out, you know, so that's good, you know, some people need to make other people afraid, you know.
And what made me realize we do have a brand is what you said.